call the meeting to order at 8:46 or 44. This is the July 8th meeting of the SDCERS Board of Administration. Come to order. Board members Tom Patiglia, Tasha Kalura, Lisa Marie Harris, Michelle Bush. Wait, Michelle's here. Oh, shit, Michelle's here. Excuse me. And Cliff Shearson called to let us know that they will be unable to attend today. So please, if you could call the roll, Rosie.
I'd be happy to, Mr. President. Paul Kaufman.
Here.
Brett Bartolotta.
Here.
Thomas Baptiste absent. Michelle Bush.
Here.
Lisa Marie Harris. She's absent. Charles Hawquist.
Present.
Paul Lotz.
Here.
Louis Maggi.
Here.
Louis Gwen.
Here.
Roberta Spoon. Here. And that concludes the roll call, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. So I'd like to announce when you're voting on action items, the board secretary will call the roll for votes. So when making a motion or a second, please state your name first so we can prove that vote. Let's move on to section 3, public comment. Rosie, do we have any public comment today?
No, Mr. President, we do not have any public comment.
Thank you very much.
Agenda.
So let's move on to section 4, which is the approval of consent agenda items. There are 4 on the list today. Service retirements, deferred retirement options, or drop entries, deferred retirement, drop entry retirements, and the training plan. So without further ado, may I have a motion and a second for approving the consent agenda items A through D?
I so move. I'll second.
Thank you. Rosie, could you please call the vote?
Paul Kaufman.
Yes?
Brett Bartolotta.
Yes.
Michelle Bush.
Yes.
Charles Hawquist.
Aye.
Paul Lotz.
Yes.
Louis Maggi.
Yes.
Louis Gwen.
Yes.
Roberta Spoon.
Yes.
And with that, the motion passes 8-0.
Thank you very much, Rosie. So let's move on to business operations. We have one business operations action item to confirm board vice president. Greg, would you please announce this action item?
Certainly. So the SDCERS board unanimously appointed Paul Kaufman as their president at their May 2022 meeting. And the SDCERS charters and policies provide for President Kaufman to appoint a vice president with a concurrence vote of this board. President Kaufman believes Lisa Marie Harris is well qualified to serve as the SDCERS vice president due to her professional experience, leadership roles with trade associations, and a strong leadership skill set, which includes leading using SDCERS core values of customer service, accountability, professionalism, fiduciary integrity, and transparency. Board's confirmation of Paul as Lisa Marie Harris as SDCERS vice president will require a motion followed by a second and at least 7 affirmative votes. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you. Can I have a first and a second, please?
Paul first.
Thank you.
I'll vote second.
Thank you very much. Rosie, could you call the vote, please?
Paul Kaufman.
Yes?
Brett Bartolotta.
Yes.
Michelle Bush.
Yes.
Charles Hawquist.
Aye.
Paul Lotz.
Yes.
Louis Maggi.
Yes.
Louis Gwen.
Yes.
Roberta Spoon.
Yes.
And with that, the motion passes 8-0, Mr. President.
Thank you. So if I keel over tomorrow, we've got to replace it. Thank you. That's a positive statement.
You're not getting out of that.
Okay, let's move on to item number 6 today, Audit Committee. Audit Committee Chair Lana Rudenko, sorry, what's your name again? Would you please join us and provide your committee report? Oh, there she is.
I snuck in.
Snuck in. Thank you.
Good morning.
Morning.
I'm happy to provide an update of the audit committee report in person for a change. The audit committee meeting was held on July 6th, which was Wednesday of this week. So I'll go over the action items and some of the information items that were discussed in that meeting. First, the action items. There was 2 action items in the meeting. The first one was to approve the fiscal year 2023 audit plan. In that audit plan, there are 3 audits planned for the upcoming year, and several other activities that are required by the internal audit charter. The motion for that plan was approved by all committee members that were present, 3 votes to 0. The second item was to direct staff to engage in an outside firm to develop a 5-year information technology audit plan for an amount not to exceed $50,000. So Sarah communicated how doing that had been successful in fiscal year 2022, and given that program's success, the committee authorized to go forward with looking for a firm to do that and develop that IT plan. That motion was approved by all committee members again with votes 3 to 0. Next on the agenda item was information items. Those items, no action is needed or requested. There were 3 items. The first one was the internal audit services plan for FY 2022. That is the audit services that are supplied by MGO. So David Bullock and Greg Kreiner presented their plan for the 2022 audit and discussed the scope of services, the deliverables, the timeline, and some of the recent developments in the accounting and financial reporting areas that would impact that audit. The second item was the internal annual audit report for FY 2022, and Sarah presented that report to the committee. Though that report, elements of that report are required by the International Internal Accounting Audit Standards and the SDCERS Internal Audit Charter. The third item in that section of the meeting was to review the board process for the selection of independent non-board members of the audit committee. So Johnny Tran discussed that board policy and how there were no significant changes to the policy. In the report section of the agenda, again, no actions are requested in this section. There were 5 reports in this section. The first one was the Internal Audit Division report. Sarah provided a great update on the court district recommendations, which we've been working on for a couple of years, and communicated that the court is committed to remediating those items. And in fact, there was 2 court district members that attended the meeting and were receptive to receiving our questions, and we asked a few questions and they'll report back to us. The 2 people that were here from the court were the HR manager, Anita Reichart, and the assistant court auditor, Jane Mascarenas. The second report was the Information Technology Division report, and that report was given by Michelle Wagner-Malecki and provided an IT audit, or sorry, an IT update regarding 2 items in particular: the business continuity plan and the network penetration testing. The third report, Legal and Compliance Division report, was given by Johnny Tran to update that there had been no allegations of fraud and fraud to investigate. And he also reviewed the SDCERS Form 700s and found no violations. Fourth report was the Compliance Plan Documents and Board Policy Annual Report, which is also given by Johnny Tran. It's the second version of this report to be completed, and that report provides assurance over compliance with plan documents and board policies. The last one was the Benefits Administration Division report given by Marcel on Top B, of course, which was a very informative update on the changes all involved with that. So that was a good report. Next was questions and comments from the chair, board members, and staff. Sarah communicated that Greg Poleski term on the audit committee comes to an end in September of 2022. And we all thanked him for 8 years of service on the audit committee. Next, we went into closed session. There were 2 items discussed in closed session. The investment compliance and wire transfer audit report was discussed. And then the second item was the performance evaluation for our chief internal auditor, Sarah Dixon. And we will be discussing that later in this meeting and during closed session. And the last item was the public employee compensation discussion. Again, involving Sarah Dixon, our chief internal auditor. So Colin Brazil, our SDCERS HR manager, presented comparative internal auditor salary information and disclosed Sarah's current salary. And the audit committee made a motion to give Sarah a 5% merit increase starting July 9th, 2022. And that was approved by all the committee members. That was present 3-0. The next audit committee is scheduled for November 16th. That concludes my update.
Thank you, Lana, for the audit committee report. Appreciate it.
Great.
Let's move on to section 7, which is the disability committee. The disability committee for Thursday, July 7th was canceled due to lack of quorum. Fortunately, the disability committee action item regarding Mr. Fry's industrial disability retirement application will be postponed until our September meeting, and Mr. Fry's attorney has been notified. Questions regarding the disability committee agenda at this time? If not, this concludes the disability committee report. Nice work, Charlie. We are going to move on to section 8, business and governance committee. Right. The business and governance committee chair, Bobby Spoon, would you please provide the report?
So you didn't have a quorum and you don't have a report. And this, the B&G committee also did not have a quorum, but I am giving a report.
That just shows how I rank on the system.
Well, we did not meet yesterday. We didn't have a quorum. However, we have action items, so I'm going to bring those action items forward here for the board to vote on. The first action item is to direct staff to engage an outside firm to develop a 5-year information technology specific internal audit plan for an amount not to exceed $50,000. And Sarah, would you like to introduce?
Here, I snuck over here and changed.
Would you like to introduce this item? And I understand that was also presented at the audit committee.
Correct. Morning, everyone. It's good to see you in person. For those of you I haven't met, I'm Sarah Dixon. I'm the Chief Internal Auditor. I'm going to talk to you about procuring some services. So SDCERS Internal Audit Division successfully completed a 3-year IT internal audit plan in fiscal year 22. Given the program's success, the inherent risk associated with IT and ever-changing IT environments, I believe the next best step should be to continue the program and hire a firm to help develop a new IT internal audit plan. The audit committee charter states that the audit committee shall not retain any individual or firm other than the internal auditor or the external auditors. Therefore, I'm seeking approval from the board today for these services. After all appropriate approvals are obtained, contract for these services would fall under the board's contracting policy for goods and services. Since the contract is not likely to exceed $50,000, the CEO can select and hire a vendor. Again, the audit committee approved this 3-0 on Wednesday, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Are there any questions? If not, I will move this item and ask for a second.
I'll second.
Thank you. Rosie, will you please call the vote?
Yes, Madam Chair. Paul Kaufman,
Yes.
Fred Bartolotta,
Yes.
Michelle Bush,
Yes.
Charles Hockwith,
Aye.
Paul Lutz,
Yes.
Lee Margie,
Yes.
Lee Nguyen,
Yes.
Roberta Spoon,
Yes.
and with that, the motion passes 8-0.
All right, moving on. The second action item is staff's recommendation to waive board rule 4.3 for member John Llewellyn. And Marcel is going to introduce this item.
Good morning, everyone. This may look a little familiar to you. This is a request to waive the board rule 4.30 for Mr. Llewellyn. It relates to his purchase of service contract. You may recall back in November, we brought something similar to you for Jana Will, another one of our members. The challenge we're having in the funding of PSC contracts is occurring when they are using funds that are not part of a City of San Diego plan. So when they are transferring from principal, which handles the SPSB funds for the city, handles 401k funds for the city, or from 457 funds that are handled by partners, we've not had any difficulty in getting those funds to us within the 60-day time frame that they're allotted. This is again working with an outside agency. They are unfamiliar with SDCERS, and they were definitely unfamiliar with governmental plans in general. And so there was significant back and forth. The timeline is provided for you in my report of trying to get those funds over. Because Mr. Llewellyn was proactive and working with them, as well as SDCERS staff, working with them throughout the process, we're asking that the board allow us to accept his payment, which came 2 days after the deadline. If we do not accept it, we have to recalculate the contract for him according to our board rules, which will increase the cost and either require him to come up with additional funds or accept less service credit. A little bit later, a couple items, we're going to talk about a permanent solution to this issue, but right now I'm asking the board to please waive board rule 4.30 for Mr. Llewellyn.
Any questions from the board?
Actually, I have a question. So as an example, it was in an IRA outside with Fidelity and someone's just transferred in. Okay.
Fidelity usually works well with us. This was a company, Thrivent, that I was not familiar with.
Okay.
But yeah, Fidelity usually is pretty good. We definitely don't have any issues with things that are related to the city. We get 60 days should be sufficient time to transfer funds.
Right.
But unfortunately, in this case, it wasn't.
Frustrating, isn't it?
It's frustrating for the member. It's frustrating for staff.
Right, right. Well, any other questions? If not, I will move this item and ask for a second.
I'll second.
Call the vote.
Paul Kaufman,
Yes.
Fred Bartolotta,
Yes.
Michelle Bush.
Yes.
Charles Lundquist,
Aye.
Paul Lowe,
Yes.
Lee Margie,
Yes.
Lee Nguyen,
Yes.
Roberta Spoon.
Yes.
And with that, the motion passes 8-0. Madam Chancellor.
Okay, moving on to item number 3, staff's recommendation to review various changes to charters and policies as listed in the document. Johnny?
Yeah, good morning, everyone. As part of our routine reviews, every 3 years or 1 year, depending on the policy, we review these as staff and we're recommending minor changes, which are detailed in my report. I'm speaking on this today because part of this review for you is also a training that you are familiar with your conflicts of interest policy, your fraud and criminal acts policy, and I'll answer any questions about that. But other than that, these changes are minor and again are spoken to in my report. Answer any questions you have, otherwise we will need a first and a second and a vote.
Any questions? I will move the item and I need a second.
I'll second.
Great.
Paul.
Can you call the vote?
Paul Kaufman,
Yes.
Fred Bartolotta,
Yes.
Michelle Bush.
Yes.
Charles Lundquist,
Aye.
Paul Lowe, Lee Margie,
Yes.
Lee Nguyen,
Yes.
and Roberta Spoon.
Yes.
Yeah, Madam Chair, the motion passes 8-0.
Great. Moving on to the last action item. Staff's recommendation to amend various board rules as listed. The action item, Marcel.
Hello again. So this is, as Johnny said, part of our triennial review of all of our board rules. Particular board rules we are getting in right under the wire. They were last reviewed in July of 2019. We had held off on bringing this to you waiting for the city to complete their municipal code changes related to Prop B. So the significant changes in these board rules are to align our board rules with the municipal code changes for Proposition B, for the unwinding of Proposition B. There are two things in here that are not specific to Proposition B, and that is in Board Rule 4.30, the cost of service credit. One of the changes that we are asking the board to approve is deleting two sections that relate to specific types of time airport members were allowed to purchase. The airport amended their plan document and removed those two options. When they did that, they confirmed that there were no members that were eligible to purchase that time. So they were not taking away something that somebody could have purchased. Could have purchased it had, and they just wanted to remove it for future reference. So that's one of the changes. The second change is what we just talked about, which is adding something in here to provide the CEO with discretion in accepting late rollover payments for purchase of service contracts, so that we don't have to bring these to you every time. It seems it should be more of an administrative function, not having to bring it to the board each time. So that's our second request. I'm happy to answer any questions on the specifics. I am going to talk about Prop B quite a bit more in my board report. So that heads up, we don't need to go. If you have specific questions on Prop B, I'm happy to answer them, but I'm also going to talk about Prop B again a little bit later.
Questions? If not, I'll move the item, and do I have a second? Great.
Paul Kaufman,
Yes.
Fred Bartolotta, Michelle Bush,
Yes.
Charles Conquest,
Aye.
Paul Lutz,
Yes.
Lee Machi,
Yes.
Lee Nguyen,
Yes.
Roberta Spoon.
Yes.
And with that, the motion passes 8-0.
Thank you very much, everybody. That concludes our action items. The B&G committee received reports from various department heads, and 3 of the department heads would like to orally present their report. So, Cynthia here?
Oh, yes.
Where is she?
I feel that the only appropriate course of action is to beatbox this so that my head will survive. Thank you for being here. You all look great. My name is Cynthia Queen. I'm the Member Services Director. Trying to speak loudly. So much has happened since I submitted my Member Services Board report. One of our 3 retirement counselors retired on July 1st after 24 years of dedicated service to SDCERS. I want to commend and thank Rosemary Palestini. Rosemary worked in several divisions of SDCERS, including finance, benefits administration,
Okay, let's move on to the investment committee meeting. Cliff Shearson is not with us today, unfortunately, but Lou Maji has agreed to serve as interim chair for the July committee meeting in his absence. So Lou, would you, Lou?
Thank you, Paul. Yesterday, we did have a investment committee meeting. We had a quorum of 3. We had 3 action items to talk about, all of which passed 3-0. The first one being the annual investment policy statement update. And for that, we will go to Demetrius.
Morning, everyone. The investment policy statement, or IPS, is a critical document for SDCERS as it contains the framework for how the investment program is run. It has important information such as investment goals and core beliefs, asset allocation targets, guidelines for monitoring and reporting, and roles and responsibilities for various parties, among other things. Every year, SDCERS reviews the IPS to ensure that the policies in place are up to date and continue to be appropriate for the fund circumstances. The IPS is also reviewed by SDCERS' investment consultant and its fiduciary council. There are 3 notable updates to the IPS as a result of this year's review that I'll go over briefly. The first was updating SDCERS' target asset allocation to reflect the changes that were approved by the board at the May meeting as part of the annual asset allocation review. This involved increasing the US equity target and decreasing the non-US equity target to align with the global market weights, which are roughly 60% US equities, 40% non-US equities. The second was adding language to the proxy voting section to allow SDCERS' investment managers who have separately managed accounts the ability to vote proxies on behalf of the plan if it is feasible, prudent, and cost-effective for them to do so. So this will provide SDCERS with increased flexibility and can result in cost savings for the plan. And the third was adding language regarding the incorporation of ESG, environmental, social, and governance considerations into SDCERS' portfolio, and some additional language on the responsibility of SDCERS' staff and its consultants and advisors when it comes to monitoring and reporting ESG data. There were a few other minor changes that are outlined in the red line version of the IPS that was a part of the board materials. And as Lou mentioned, this was approved yesterday at the IC. If there are no questions, I'll turn it back to you.
Any questions or discussion on this item? Hearing none, I'll go ahead and move the item over. No second is needed. Rosie, would you call the vote?
Paul Kaufman,
Yes.
Fred Bartolotta,
Yes.
Michelle Bush, Charles Hopquist,
Aye.
Paul Lutz,
Yes.
Lee Manji,
Yes.
Lee Nguyen,
Yes.
Roberta Spoon.
Yes.
And with that, the motion passes 8-0, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Rosie. Next, I think Jamie's going to talk to us about the annual real estate policy and investment plan update.
That's correct. Good morning, everyone. So you have in front of you Nikita's update on the real estate policy and investment plan. You'll recall that both of these documents were brought in front of you at the March meeting for approval. The updates approved at that time were part of Nikita's initial review of SDCERS real estate documents and included suggested updates for the remainder of fiscal year 2022. Typically, these documents are updated on an annual basis at the beginning of each fiscal year, which is why this item is being brought in front of you today. For the real estate investment policy, staff and Nikita are not recommending any further changes given the changes that were made at the March meeting. For the real estate investment plan, there are several initiatives planned for fiscal year 2023, and I'd like to quickly walk you through the main initiatives. In the core portfolio, there are 2 main initiatives. First, SDCERS has sold the last property in the DWS real estate separate account. With the funds from that sale and the proceeds from the redemption of the AEW Core Property Trust, Nikita is recommending a rebalancing within the core portfolio to reallocate funds to SDCERS 2 existing Core Plus industrial funds, $25 million to the REEF Core Plus Industrial Fund and $45 million to the Clarion Line Industrial Trust. Second, with the completion of the DWS real estate separate account liquidation, Nikita is conducting analysis on the existing core open-end commingled funds. Currently, the portfolio has 7 funds. Nikita is evaluating reducing that number to 5 or 6 to potentially seek optimal diversification with less investment management fees. In the non-core portfolio, Nikita is recommending that SDCERS commit to 3 to 4 funds for a total of $100 million over the course of fiscal year 2023. Possible sectors for these non-core commitments include multifamily, non-core debt, or a diversified strategy. As Lou mentioned, the investment committee voted to approve real estate policy and investment plan 3-0 yesterday. And at this point, I will stop and see if there are any questions that I can answer. Lou, turn it back to you.
Thank you, Jamie. We'll go ahead and move this item for a vote. Rosa?
Paul Kaufman,
Yes.
Brett Bartolotta,
Yes.
Michelle Bush.
Yes.
Charles Sutcliffe,
Aye.
Paul Oates,
Yes.
Lee Marchi,
Yes.
Lee Nguyen,
Yes.
and Roberta Spoon.
Yes.
And with that, Mr. Chair, the motion passes 8-0.
Thank you. And the third item is return seeking fixed income structure recommendations, and we're going to hear from Anders.
Thank you, Luke. Good morning, everyone. Excuse me. This item is an action item where staff and Aon are recommending that the board approve the proposed structure for the return-seeking fixed income allocation. This allocation has historically been 100% emerging market debt. But as you may recall, in May of 2021, the board approved to expand this emerging market debt allocation to a broader return-seeking fixed income allocation that includes areas of the credit market like high yield bonds and bank loans, and also has some emerging market debt exposure in there. This was done to further diversify the portfolio and allow each manager more leeway to invest in different areas of the credit market where they see more opportunity, instead of kind of pigeonholing the managers to just being able to invest in emerging market debt. And we believe that this change will increase the value add opportunity in that asset class. I did have fantastic pie charts that I was going to show you, but they're up there somewhere, so you're going to have to take my word for it instead here. This allocation to the return-seeking fixed income is roughly 5% of the portfolio, or about $521 million in dollar terms. The current allocation is in emerging market debt only. It was a 3-manager structure, and the proposed structure for the return-seeking fixed income allocation is also based on a 3-manager approach, where there are 2 multi-asset credit managers, or we call them MAC managers for short, that each make up 40% of the allocation. And then we also have a 3rd dedicated emerging market debt manager that would make up the remaining 20% of the target portfolio. The goal of this proposed structure is first and foremost to create a efficient and comprehensive exposure to the return-seeking fixed income universe, and at the same time allow each manager, as I mentioned, the ability to rotate in and out of sectors where they see the most value. We believe that this proposed structure will accomplish the goals that we set out with the return-seeking fixed income allocation. And as I mentioned earlier, we recommend that the board approve this proposed structure. If the board were to approve it, we will bring manager recommendations to fill this allocation to the board for you to review and approve at the September meeting. And this item was approved yesterday at the investment committee meeting 3-0. Any questions that I have a chance of?
Thank you, Anders. Any questions?
Is there going to be any additional cost to us for having this new 3-manager system?
It depends on what the cost structure is for the managers that we're bringing forth for the recommendation in September. It's manager specific, and will obviously be open to our contract negotiation. But we'll bring that forth at the September meeting.
Hearing no more questions, I'll go ahead and move it back over for a vote. Rosie?
Paul Kaufman,
Yes.
Brett Bartolotta,
Yes.
Michelle Bush.
Yes.
Charles Sutcliffe.
Aye.
Paul Oates,
Yes.
Lee Marchi,
Yes.
Lee Nguyen,
Yes.
and Roberta Spoon. Yes. And with that, Mr. Chair, the motion passes 8-0.
Thank you very much. We have 3 information items to talk about. Forgive me while I read from the page here, but I've got some notes. The first information item was the total fund performance report for the quarter ended March 31st. We heard from Anders on this and also Aon. In the first quarter of 2022, the total fund had a net return of -0.7%, which outperformed the benchmark which returned negative 2.6%. Outperformance relative to the benchmark was driven by the Opportunity Fund, where the managed futures allocation contributed strong returns thanks to long commodity positions and U.S. equities, which outperformed in large part due to the receipt of securities litigations proceeds. SDCERS is also outperforming its benchmarks over time horizons, and is in the top quartile versus public pensions of similar size over the past 10 and 20 years. Second item was private markets ESG monitoring and reporting. We heard from Demetrius. Following the ESG presentations at the January and March investment committee meetings, SDCERS staff worked with its investment consultants and advisors to implement an ESG monitoring and reporting framework. Moving forward, SDCERS real estate consultant Makita will add an ESG score for SDCERS real estate portfolio to the quarterly real estate performance reports. SDCERS private market advisors, GSM Grosvenor and Stepstone, will incorporate ESG data on current and potential private equity and infrastructure investments into their quarterly performance reports as well. The third item was annual securities litigation report. We got a behind the scenes look at the litigation going on. We heard from Melanie Peter. Of the litigation ongoing, we've recovered in fiscal year 2022 of the non-confidential recoveries near $1 million. So things are going well in that area. That was it for the information items. We spent some time talking about Liza at the end of our meeting. It was her last investment committee meeting. Should we hold that for the end of the meeting, or? Okay, we'll get back to that at the very end. We had no closed session reporting. So that was it for the investment committee.
Thank you, Lou, for serving as our interim chairman and for the committee report for next week.
Thank you.
We're going to move on to section 10, which is questions and comments. I guess before I begin, I just want to recognize Liza for her stellar performance and joining with us at the SDCERS over the last several years. So it's been a pleasure working with you. Some additional comments will be made. Do we have any questions or comments from board members in general?
I think that would be a great time to celebrate Liza.
Okay, great, you're on.
All right. Well, we're as everybody knows, we're wishing bon voyage to Liza, our chief investment officer. And I believe SDCERS has been fortunate to have Liza dedicate a portion of her storied investment career to public service and being with here at SDCERS. Since joining SDCERS investment team in 2008, Liza's collaborative leadership with the board and our investment consultants have been instrumental in restructuring the investment portfolio, such that is now a nationally recognized as a superior long-term performer with consistent top-tier risk-return characteristics. The SDCERS team will miss Liza's contributions to the investment program's success and to SDCERS' mission to deliver accurate, timely benefits and to ensure the trust fund's safety, integrity, and growth. We celebrate Liza in her pending retirement and appreciate her leaving a strong and lasting legacy built upon professionalism, respect, inclusion, and collegiality. Her management style has been a positive influence on our entire organization, especially the leadership team and those who had the pleasure to work directly with her. Although her impact may be long-lived, and she does not retire until the end of July, in our hearts, we miss her already. Just my personal thanks and gratitude to Liza for being here with us, and we're going to see you. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. So let's move on to section 11, which is the closed session for staff, consultants, and visitors not invited to participate in the closed session. Would you please leave the room? And Rosie, please stop recording the session while we're in closed session.
Yes. Mr. Pepper.
Okay, we're ready, Paul. Take it, Michelle.
Michelle, you okay?
I'm good. Thank you.
Okay. So we're moving back into open session here, section 12. So Johnny, can you give us a closed session report?
Yes, we have one thing to report out of closed session is that we retained the law firm Noonan Lance by a vote of 8-0 to represent SDCERS in the lawsuit of Lasaga versus SDCERS. Other than that, we have nothing to report.
Thank you, Johnny. So let's move on to section 13, which is the public employee compensation. This is the discussion and consideration of the compensation for the CEO and the CIA. We need Colin for this. There she is. Sorry. You keep moving around.
No
So
problem.
I'd like to recognize Colin Brazil as the SDCERS Human Resources Manager to present the salary survey for the CIO, CIA.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So for the SDCERS board policy, it's my responsibility to present the board with the salary study for the CEO and the chief internal auditor in the July open session every year. So starting with the CEO salary study, it's been presented to you already. No action is required at this time on this study until the September meeting, just so you know, there's no vote today. I did the salary study in June for both the CEO and the CIA. And I believe that because it will be in September and there are a lot of salary changes and additions and negotiations are in process right now, I'd like to present you with an updated version of this study then to give you a more accurate depiction of the salaries in the agencies, and then also some additional information to help you make some recommendations and appropriate adjustments. We can go over this right now, but just a few highlights I'd like to share with you about the CEO right now, though. There, as of July 1st of this year, there was a citywide COLA, and the CEO is currently at the salary at $339,144. The maximum of the salary range was also increased for the CEO, so that is now at $426,192. So those are just a couple of highlighted numbers. And we can go over the new salary study in September, which I will present to you no less than 2 weeks before our September meeting. So I have a chance to go over it and contact me with any questions. If everyone is okay with that. And moving over to the CIA.
I'm sorry.
Mhm.
Bobby, did you have something you wanted to add on this survey?
Colin is going to update this, as she said, and she's going to include all the cost of living increases that she can get, and she's also going to include LA County.
LA County, and some additional footnotes to make it more clear for you when you review the survey.
Thank you.
Of course. No other questions on that? We'll move over to the CIA survey. And at the July Audit Committee meeting on Wednesday, I presented the salary survey to them as well. And as a result, they recommended a 5% salary increase for our CIA. That will be effective tomorrow, the first day of the pay period, July 9th, 2022. Sarah's current salary is $199,500. And if the 5% increase is approved, she will be at $209,475, like I said, effective 7/9.
Did she also get the citywide?
She did. She also did get the citywide.
So does that mean it's a total of 10%?
Yes.
Ah, okay.
The new maximum for her salary range is $231,483. So at it.
What does that bring her to now?
So she will be at 209. If she gets the 5%,
Yeah.
she'll be at 209,475. But the range of her classification,
It's up to 231.
exactly.
Okay.
So there's still a little more wiggle room in there. And similarly, there were some changes that probably have occurred since I did the salary adjustment, because doing it in June, most salary adjustments happen in July, so they happen after the salary study, but per the charter, we have to present it in July, so it has to be done in June. But like I explained to the audit committee, A couple agencies did not respond, so they had 2021 information. Negotiations are ongoing and a couple more. The COLA were included for 4 different agencies, and one agency has two of them had no increases planned. So for the most part, they're accurate, but there are a few agencies that their numbers may change for Sarah, but this is just to give you a snapshot and idea of what the salaries look like as of the salary study in June. So if you don't have any questions, at this point, we are requesting a vote to approve the recommended salary of 5% effective July 9th for Sarah.
I
I'll
move.
move.
Second. Second, okay. Rosie, you
Who
want to-
seconded
just-
it?
did
I'm
I
sorry,
move it?
Michelle.
Michelle. seconding. Bobby
I'm
first.
sorry. Thank you for the clarification.
You can take the vote.
I heard you both make it. Paul Kaufman,
Yes.
Beth Bartolotta,
Yes.
Michelle Bush.
Yes.
Charles Hopkins,
Aye.
Paul Lutz,
Yes.
Lee Machi,
Yes.
Lee Quinn,
Yes.
Roberta Spoon.
Yes.
And with that, the motion passes 8-0.
Thank you,
Mr.
Rosie.
President.
Without further ado, I will turn it over to Greg for comments.
All right, yeah. Thank you for your indulgence. I had just a few more CEO comments than we had under kind of good of the order. I was so overtaken with sadness from talking about license. I forgot to make it at the time. But to begin with, I just wanted to recognize Louis. He was named by the San Diego Business Journal as one of our community's top 50 Asian Pacific Islander leaders of influence. So, we're really fortunate to have Louis serve on SDCERS board. And his recognition is just yet another example of just our board's professional strength. So thank you, Louis, for being here. Thank you. Glad you're part of our team. I'd also like to recognize this board for their flexibility in meeting virtually over the past 2 years, starting with our March and May 2020 meetings, which were held via teleconferences, and beginning to transition to in-person meetings, especially today, where who knew that all the electronics go crazy today? So I apologize for that. I really hope that we'll be meeting in person coming our September meeting. But again, that's up to the building. They're renovating the space, but I really hope that we'll hold our next meeting in person up in our regular meeting rooms up on the 3rd floor. But we'll keep the board apprised of logistics as we get closer to that. As we talked briefly when Marcel was giving us a great education about Prop B, we're hoping to hold an educational board offsite on August 24th. That seemed to work with almost everybody's calendar, and also the consultants that we've invited in help us. We're still looking to find a good location to hold that meeting, but we'll keep you apprised of that. And as we mentioned, we're going to have Chiron come in. Jean was really excited about the opportunity to come talk to this board. And Alice is also available, and she is a great communicator, really lucky to have her on the team, but they're going to come talk to us about the actuarial evaluation process, what we like to call actuarial 101. We've had this class in the past, it's very well received, and we're looking forward to that. And as Marcel said, it's a really good foundation for our conversations coming up on Proposition B. We'd also like to do some education on the disability process. There's some reoccurring issues that come up, and Sandra has agreed to kind of walk us through the process of the disability process and highlight topics du jour, as I like to say. So we'll be going through that, and we would also be talking about investment program basics. So I feel that in our investment committee, we get lots of information coming at us, but we also have many members of the board who are not on the investment committee. And it would be nice to give them a educational foundation of what's really important. What are all the moving parts? So kind of having Aon, our general investment consultant, come in and talk about that. And I called up Steve Voss, who is now the Western Region Manager for Aon. And he was excited. He loves coming and talking about these kind of things. So Steve's going to be there. And we're hoping Katie Comstock, who is kind of more the lead on our account now. She may have another client conflict that she has to honor, but she's hopefully that they will both be here to talk to the board. So I'm really, really excited about that.
Greg, can I ask that we send out a calendar appointment so we can block that off. I just checked my calendar. If that hasn't.
Excellent.
Yeah,
Yes, we will.
that'd be great. And then if we, ESG has been a topic, and just, we were just talking about it, so if there's space in the agenda for us to insert more conversations around ESG and how we ought to think about it.
Absolutely. Yeah. And one of the presentations that we're doing, which is one of my favorites, the story that must keep alive, that is the lessons learned from the city's pension crisis.
It's the Johnny Tran.
That's the Johnny Tran presentation. So, again, that is a good story to keep alive. And we should almost think about doing it again for the mayor's office like we did a couple of years ago. So, anyway. But as we finalize the logistics, we'll give more information, but we'll put out that calendar. I thank you for that. Would be great. And
It's going to be an all-day event.
I'm trying to make it probably shortly after lunch. So we'd spend the morning together.
Okay.
Feed you some food because we always like to eat.
Yeah.
And then and have one session after lunch and then that would be
Okay.
at most 3/4 of the day. Speaking of actuarial evaluations, Marcel and I were requested to present the Airport Authority's 2021 evaluation to their board on May 2nd. And so it was their first in-person presentation since they started meeting back in person at the Airport Authority. So it was kind of fun to do. The presentation was well received, and they were very thankful of our administration and specifically this board's stewardship in funding the plan. So, sending you good thoughts for your commitment to prudently administering their plan. And speaking of plan sponsors, all 3 plan sponsors prepaid their annual ADC payments on time and in full. I always like to say that because that is not true across the United States. There's many plans in a horrible mess because their plan sponsors do not pay in full. They do not pay on time. So that's not something we take for granted, but we are greatly appreciated. And the amount was about a little over 400 million.
Closer to 450.
450. There you go. That helps our funding status go, or not funding status, but the amount in the bank go up. So that's pretty good. I'd like to highlight that the Port of San Diego recently completed an audit. They have the right to audit us, and they said, hey, we would like to check on how are you guys dividing up those administrative costs that we were talking about. And so the auditors came out and looked at it and completed their audit and found that we were in compliance with everything that we said we should be doing and how we're doing it. And they looked at our allocation strategy and found that everything was in order. And so we got it. I don't think I've ever seen it before. It was an audit with no findings. So I was pretty happy about that. So I was really proud of this organization demonstrating our values of accountability, professionalism, fiduciary integrity, and transparency. We welcome them in with open arms. So,
What firm led that audit?
their internal audit department.
Oh, okay.
Airport?
Port. Oh, that's a good question to ask. You know, they pay us for a service. They should check up on us. So that's all right. I'd also like to recognize Johnny Tran for being a featured speaker at the San Diego City Attorney's Office for their diversity committee meeting. So thank you for being out there and representing SDCERS on a very important topic. And I'd also like to thank Rosie Anich
Yes,
because
Rosie.
she has been with us less than a year. And when she was interviewing, I'm like, Rosie, the meetings go so smoothly, like hardly anything ever happens. And every meeting that she's responsible for, something strange has happened, something unique has happened. So I just wanted to appreciate and recognize her flexibility in overcoming problems. And so thank you, Rosie.
Thank you.
Like today when I told her she's not going to get a microphone. All right. I'd also like to recognize, we recognized Liza for her retirement. We also had another very special retirement that was mentioned by Cynthia Queen, her team, Rosemary Palestine. And again, she has, I was looking through an old CAFR document. I mean, this was like, it almost like it was on the skin, it was so old, but there was Rosemary's name.
Nobody knows what that is.
But she has been with us, I mean, just for decades, and ever since I met Rosemary when I came to this organization 4 years ago, she has just been a bright spot, just a genuinely really good, nice person, and it just sad to lose her off the team. So I just really wanted to reemphasize just how much I appreciated her, and how much not only will her team members miss her, but our members, as Cynthia said, more recently, she's taken a more of a client forward role in the organization and done a really good job at it. But we're just gonna miss her. Just like we thank Liza for choosing us for so many years. I'd just like to also thank Rosemary for choosing us for the majority of her career here at SDCERS. Just really wishing her happiness in her retirement years. And in closing, I wanted to recognize Lou Maggi. So for being our interim investment committee chair, kind of did that at a moment's notice and gladly and willingly. And I just really would like to say you did an exceptional job with very, very short, little advance notice. So thank you, Lou. Thank you. That concludes my remark. Thank you for the extra minutes.
So if there are no other comments, I guess we'll adjourn. The next meeting is September 9th, 2020.